Cyclone Eloise is edging closer to South Africa after wreaking havoc in Mozambique. It dumped hundreds of milliliters of rain as it passed over the country. Eloise is now expected to bring heavy rains to parts of Zimbabwe and South Africa. We get you the latest on humanitarian efforts from Gemma Connell from the UN's Southern and Eastern Africa office. Gemma, thank you very much for joining us. So Eloise made landfall just outside of Beira yesterday. What do we know about the situation there today?
Thanks so much for having me. So the teams are out assessing today. We've also got aerial assessments that are ongoing. So the information that we have right now is still very preliminary. What we do know is that we do have at least several thousand houses that were destroyed or damaged. We do have a number of health facilities and schools that have been destroyed or damaged. And the assessment teams are working to gather more information as we speak. We have at least 6,900 people who've been displaced and 4,200 people who've been evacuated, which is an incredibly important point because that happened to ensure they weren't hit by the worst of the storm. And there's more than 20 accommodation centres that have been set up to care for the people who've been evacuated.
And those accommodation centres, you speak of some 6,000 people displaced. Is there enough capacity to be able to take care of that large number of people, also given the times that we are living in?
So the good news is that because of Idai, which was, of course, itself very bad news, however, post-Idai, we have quite a significant humanitarian presence on the ground. Now, under the government's leadership, so the whole response is being led by the Mozambican Institute for Disaster Risk Management and Reduction. The humanitarian community is mobilized and is supporting. One of the biggest challenges that we are all faced with is that in Mozambique, multiple responses are ongoing right now. So there's the response to the conflict in Cabo Delgado. As you'll recall, just in December 2020, we had Tropical Storm Chilean also come through these areas. So the stocks are stretched and the funding is stretched. But the good news is that there is capacity on the ground, that the government came in very early and that partners were there to support them with pre-positioned stocks and supplies to be able to run this response.
The most vulnerable, women and children, when we talk about needs what are we talking about?
So for women and children, one of the most urgent things that we always look at in a crisis is to ensure that they are protected. And that involves things like making sure that they're able to sleep in a safe space. Shelter is often one of the most critical determinants for whether or not women and children are safe. I should also add that we are concerned about the elderly. These are people, along with the disabled, who are not always able to flee in the same way that able-bodied people or younger people are able to flee. So along with women and children, we're also paying particular attention, again, under the government's leadership, to older people and people with disabilities.
Heavy rains are also expected in parts of Zimbabwe. Just what is being done on that front before those rains?
So again, I think the important point here as well is that it's not just Eloise that's coming through. For example, even in Mozambique, we had thousands of people who were already affected by flooding from mid-January prior to Eloise's landfall. And in Zimbabwe, similarly, we have seen heavy rainfall in the last few weeks. What's being done there is, again, that really urgent focus led by the government's Directorate of Civil Protection on evacuations of people who are in the highest risk areas. Now, one of the things that we're watching particularly closely together with the government is the situation of some of the dams in Zimbabwe that are either at the point of spill or are very, very close to the point of spillover. So those evacuations that are ongoing are going to be very, very important. And likewise, ensuring that we've got stocks and personnel pre-positioned to be able to run the response. And the last thing I should say is all of this is taking place, of course, within the context of COVID-19. So being acutely aware of that and ensuring that we have the right preventive measures, protective equipment in place to ensure that the response as it unfolds does not bring greater risk to the people that we're seeking to serve.
As you rightfully point out, this is nothing new, more especially in Mozambique. Just in terms of response to disaster and disaster management in that country, what sort of progress have we seen?
So the government of Mozambique has taken disaster response incredibly seriously, and you can see that even in the fact that just recently they actually upgraded the importance of their National Institute of Disaster Risk Reduction and Management, and it's now an incredibly central component of the government. It's always been important, but it's being elevated even further. In addition to that, we've all learned a lot of lessons. So some of the things that were really good practices during Idai, but we've managed to bring them forward in this response, taking place earlier after impact and being able to move forward so that we don't lose precious days and hours in the response. But I have to say the government of Mozambique is incredibly on top of the situation and moving forward very rapidly with their response.
Thank you very much, Gemma O'Connell from the United Nations Office in Southern and Eastern Africa.